We're doing our best to get through the remainder of winter. I do start to crave lighter and brighter and happier things this time of year. So I grabbed some flowers and I found this cute yellow vase at an antique store the other day. And I just thought it would be so great to make the house feel a little more cheerful as we try to make it through the rest of the winter season. I do have some baking planned today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope to give you lots of inspiration. And even though it's a pretty gloomy day around here, we have a storm coming in. So the house is a little dark, but I'm trying to make it feel cozy, turning on the lamps, turning on my diffusers. I'm actually diffusing 3 of my favorite oils that I love to combine: lavender, peppermint, and lemon. I think those 3 are so refreshing and uplifting. So doing what I can here today, baking and bringing in some cheerful spring colors and just trying to make the best of a day at home. So today I thought I would walk you guys through my very detailed process for making our 100% whole wheat sandwich bread. This is a recipe that we make every single week. It's what I always like to have on hand so that, no matter what, the kids can find something to grab and eat, something that they love. So I've been making this bread for many, many months. I've had a lot of failures, a lot of successes. So I really want to take you through kind of my whole process, give you my tips and tricks. Baking with 100% whole wheat can be tricky, especially freshly milled whole wheat. But the results are so delicious and incredibly nutritious that it's just worth it to get a sandwich bread mastered. So let's go through this whole process. This recipe can be found in my new book. This is 100% whole wheat Yeast Breads Cookbook that I just released. And it's in there. It's also on my blog post, so I'll link all of these things down in the description for you. But if you're like me, I love having recipes on hand, so I'm really excited to be working on these little niche books. This one is all about yeast breads, and then I'm also currently developing one on quick breads and desserts, all made with whole wheat, freshly milled flour. So I'm really excited to be releasing these into the world and excited to share this recipe with you and help you figure out how to make a basic loaf of bread and be successful at it every time. So the flour I like to mill for my whole wheat, well, I do one of 3 options. I like to use white whole wheat, which is what I'm using today. It's more of a lighter color, so if your kids are a little nervous about, dark brown bread, definitely go for the hard white wheat. I also like to use hard red wheat for this recipe. It works really good. And then as far as the ancient grains go, I have found that spelt works really well. You just don't knead it as much. Spelt is a little more delicate, so you just don't have to knead it quite as much. But these are grains that have a higher protein content, which means they form the gluten structure better, which is why they work great for yeast breads. So I mill it up in my Nutri-Mill, make this beautiful freshly milled flour, so full of nutrients, vitamin E, so many great stuff. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. I need to take a minute to tell you about today's video sponsor, which is Caraway. This is my cookware set that I've had for probably over a year now. I love it so much. This is my favorite brand for getting non-toxic cookware. They coat their products in a ceramic lining and it's not leaching forever chemicals into your food. I actually became very aware of toxic cookware years ago. I want to say about 9 or 8 years ago. I was actually making muffins for my kids just from a muffin tin that we'd been gifted on our wedding. It was probably a really cheap set, but I was watching my kids eat the muffins that I had made them and I had noticed little flecks of something on the bottom of their muffins. And I later discovered it was the Teflon literally flaking into my kids' muffins and my kids were consuming it and I freaked out. I did some research, found out how harmful Teflon and forever chemicals can be, and I've been trying to make the switch away from them ever since. And speaking of muffin tins, I've recently been able to try the Caraway bakeware set as well. And they have these muffin tins, ceramic coated. Nothing has been flaking. I've been doing a lot of muffin testing in my kitchen, and these are so nice. I don't even have to like spray them with anything nonstick. The muffins just lift out. So everything Caraway makes is just my favorite. I love them so much. Let me actually demo for you the amazing nonstick feature of these ceramic coated cookware pans. One great way to see this is when you're cooking a fried egg. If you just put a tiny layer of butter or oil, your eggs will just slide off of here, flip super easily. The pan is so easy to clean up. It's just amazing how it functions so wonderfully. You can tell that these are made from really quality materials, and I just love those slide off the pan eggs, the lift out of the cup muffins. Everything is just so amazing to cook with. This is also peace of mind. Caraway's non-toxic coating is third-party tested and verified. Caraway tests for over 200 forever chemicals to ensure that it is not in their ceramic coating. If you're just getting started with Caraway products, I'd really recommend their cookware set. It comes with the Dutch oven, the saucepan, the fry pan, and the saute pan. This is really a great set. It meets all my needs. I love having it. I love the organization system as well. I keep the lids hanging on the door where we put all our pots and pans, and then it's got the little magnetic organizers that they just slide into. Really nice. Now you can actually buy individual products on the Caraway site, and I'll link to it all below in the description, but I recommend the cookware set because if you bundle them, you're actually saving 20% off. Plus, you can stack my coupon code tidbits10 and save an additional 10% off. You can also use my code on any of their products site-wide, so if you wanted to try the muffin tins, any of their bakeware, add on a little piece to your cookware set, that coupon code will work for you. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Caraway. I'm actually really excited to try out their bread pan for my bread loaves today, first time, so we'll see how that goes. I have high hopes. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed hearing about Caraway, and definitely check the description for all those links. Okay, let's take you through the very detailed process so that you have all the tips and tricks for making a successful loaf of bread. So I like to use our filtered water from my Barreau, and I get a little saucepan and warm up the water to warm, but not too warm. I like to just think of it like if I felt comfortable bathing a baby in this temperature, then I think it's the right temperature to activate the yeast. So you have to watch it and make sure it doesn't get too hot or it will kill the yeast, but just perfectly warm so that yeast can really get activated. So I pour that warm water into my mixer. You can also do this by hand if you're up for that. And then I put my active dry yeast inside of the water. Now the yeast will actually activate in the water just fine, but I find it really gets a good start if you add whatever sweetener or sugar you're putting into your recipe with the water and the yeast. Yeast really loves to eat up any sugars. So I like to put my honey in with the water and the yeast and then let it sit for about 10 minutes and activate. I do mix it up a little bit to incorporate that honey. I also find that the warm water will help the honey kind of dissolve, or if you're using any other kind of sugar, it helps it dissolve. So I let those 3 ingredients just sit and activate and get ready for the rest of the ingredients. So the rest of the ingredients are 2 eggs, and then I believe it's 2/3 cup of olive oil. You add in your salt at this point, as well as your sunflower lecithin if you're using that. I find the lecithin really helps with the structure and making it light and fluffy. So I get those mixed up real well, making sure that the egg yolks are being broke up and that all that liquid ingredient is incorporated really well. Okay, with all of that mixed up, you're ready to add the flour. So this beautiful freshly milled flour, I am weighing because it can get compacted. Sometimes the cup measurements can vary so significantly. So in my recipes, I always list the amount of flour I use in cups and grams, and the grams is a much more accurate way to measure freshly milled flour. So I measure up about half of what I need and then put it in the mixer, and then add the other half and slowly get that mixed up. But you can see here in the mixer, it's starting to take shape. Now it's still gonna be a little tacky and doughy, and freshly milled flour dough, you really do wanna keep a little bit on the tacky and doughy side, but still workable. Now here you can see I'm just storing up the rest of my flour, but there's a couple things you need to know about freshly milled flour. One, you can over knead it because the bran and germ are still in there. They are microscopically sharp, and if you knead it too much, it will actually destroy the gluten structure, and that's when you have like bread collapse. A lot of times it's not strong enough, so the center will collapse, and then you'll get a doughy bread result no matter how long you bake it, because it sinks and then stays doughy and the top often separates. So you don't want to knead it too much. So I knead it usually for about 5 minutes. Any more than that, then I find I start to deal with the collapsing issue. The other thing you need to know about working with freshly milled flour specifically is that it takes a while to absorb the liquid. So a lot of people will just add the flour and the water and let it sit. I just go ahead and mix up all the ingredients and just realize that this dough is going to be a little sticky. You have to be careful not to add too much flour thinking you need more, because it's just tacky and a little difficult to work with. But once it sits and absorbs all that liquid and rises at the same time, it's going to be much easier to work with as you're shaping your loaves. So I just do my best to oil the bowl in my hands and then let that sit and raise for about 45 minutes to an hour, about until it's like double in size. And it's going to be so much easier to work with. You just have to be careful not to add too much flour, thinking there's not enough while it's mixing, and then making sure you're not over kneading it. Those are 2 big tips that I'd like to leave with you when you're using freshly milled flour and making yeast breads out of it. Okay, while that bread's rising, let me go on a little tangent about real bread. I don't really have any thoughts planned. Just gonna spew thoughts like I do for my kids, which they really appreciate. But in my book, I actually have some chapters before the recipes that really go into the history of bread and flour and what's been done to it, the benefits of freshly milled flour, how to store freshly milled flour, and what happens to the nutrients as it oxidizes. So I go through a lot of those details in this book. As you can tell, I'm quite passionate. But something that's so cool is that bread, like real bread, and I'm talking you mill it the same day and you bake it. Real bread has 27 out of 30 of the nutrients that are necessary to sustain life. 27 out of the 30. You can kind of see how the Lord called bread the staff of life. Like it really does sustain us. But a lot of times we don't think of bread that way. I know growing up, I was kind of engineered to think bread would make me fat, bread was unhealthy, gluten's really bad is a huge messaging that's going on today. And so it can be confusing when someone, or when you've been trained to think that and then someone tells you that you should be eating real bread more than just about anything. Now, a lot of times I actually get asked, can you use these recipes with just whole wheat flour that you buy from the store? And yes, you definitely can. You could even try it with white flour. You might have to like vary the amounts you're putting in there, but I think they'll still work. But I do think the results are going to be different because freshly milled flour is so incredibly moist. What happens in the store for even like when you're buying even top of the line, organic, 100% whole wheat, they've still had to strip out a lot of the bran and germ that's in the wheat berries. Because the bran and germ contain a lot of oils, and that is what oxidizes and goes bad quickly. So they have to take those out to make a shelf-stable product. Otherwise, freshly milled flour goes rancid really fast, and it actually very quickly loses its nutritional value. Let me actually flip to the chart in my book. So your optimal time is like the day you mill it, or maybe one day after. And you can see I store some, I over mill flour and then store it in the jar. That's because I'm using it to like feed my sourdough starter. I can almost guarantee it's gonna get used within that day or the next day. So I just kind of always mill as much as my mill will do, and then I know I'm gonna bake with it within a day or two, because Those are your peak freshness days. All the nutrients are intact and you can just store it at room temperature. But in 2 to 7 days, you actually start to get the oxidation of the oils and you lose a lot of the vitamin E. Look up vitamin E oil. It is incredible. There are stories about people that are so deficient in vitamin E that they get warts and other skin issues. And then eating real bread has actually made all those issues go away. So pretty cool stories that you can actually hear on Sue Becker's podcast, which I highly recommend you listen to. She gets a lot of testimonials, which are fun to listen to. But in 2 to 7 days, you really should think about, if you have extra flour, storing it in the refrigerator or the freezer, because in 1 to 2 weeks, there's a noticeable loss of the B vitamins. The flavor begins to dull and the oils start to go rancid. So it's really quick. In 3 to 4 weeks, you get a significant nutrient loss and you'll start to notice that rancid taste. After 1 month, most of the nutrients are completely degraded. The flavor is compromised and you're really risking a lot of spoilage. So you can see how freshly milled flour is really just best. So back to kind of the history of flour. People always set up their communities around the local mill. That's where they would take the wheat berries and get their daily flour ground up to use for daily baking. But when the roller mills came into the scene, was this early 1900s, late 1800s maybe, these steel rolling mills realized that they could sift out a lot of that bran and germ and give us a more shelf-stable product, aka all-purpose white flour. And plus, with our farming practices and bleaching agents, a lot has been done to our flour. And so it's really no surprise to me that a lot of people do get sick when they eat commercial all-purpose flour. And that is concerning. But if you really start to experience the benefits of real bread, meaning freshly milled flour made into bread, same day, ideally, you really begin to notice how much healthier you feel. For us personally as a family, a lot of our inflammatory symptoms have gone away. I just have so much energy when I eat real bread and I just feel so good. There's fiber and protein in it. All that fiber is just keeping our digestive systems working so well. And we really have experienced a lot of the benefits. And so I've gotten really passionate about it and have wanted to show up here and share more of this with you guys. Anyway, I could make this tangent last way too long, but I've got other stuff I want to make. I need to test some more muffin recipes for my QuickBooks cookbook that I'm working on. Not QuickBooks. I always want to say QuickBooks. Quick breads, meaning non-yeasted bread. So instead of using yeast, we are going to use baking powder and baking soda and those kind of things. So muffins, pancakes, waffles, all those things I'm experimenting with and compiling in another cookbook. And then I want to do a dessert book as well. But to not take too much of your time here today, I also am planning to do a big video series to really deep dive into flour and cooking with freshly milled flour so that you guys can understand more of the benefits. But until then, I highly recommend heading over to Sue Becker's podcast. It's super great. You can find it on YouTube or podcast platforms. But I've really enjoyed learning from her. I really feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants who have done a lot of the research and the work to educate us on freshly milled flour. So I just want to take my spin on it and present it to you guys and hopefully motivate and inspire you as well to get more freshly milled flour baked goods into your home. And I know I'm just making one of the recipes here in this cookbook, but there are 20 of our family's favorites. These are the basic go-to yeast bread recipes: bagels, pita pockets, naan bread. I've got several different roll types that you can make and have fun with. French bread. So I've had a lot of fun with this cookbook. And I don't know about you, but I get frustrated going onto websites and dealing with ads and everything. I know I have a website and have to do the same thing. But it's just nice to have a cookbook. You can trust the recipes. They're not AI generated. These are tested time and time again in my kitchen. And it's just so easy to grab this little cookbook. You know, it's very niche down. So you know, if you want to make a yeast bread, just grab the Yeast Bread Cookbook. And that's what I hope to continue to develop, more niche down books for you. But I've got hamburger, hot dog, hoagie buns, pretzels, breadsticks, pizza dough, chocolate bread dough. Anyway, I'm going on more of a tangent than I planned on. But let me just relax here a little bit, then I'll be back once this dough has risen and we'll finish the baking process. Okay, here it is, this beautiful dough, all risen about double in size and ready to be shaped into loaves of bread. And this recipe makes about 3 loaves of bread in your standard size loaf pans. And all these details are listed in the recipe. I'll leave in the description, or you can definitely get the cookbook. But I roughly divide this into 3 loaves. You can be more exact and weigh it. I'm just kind of playing it by ear. I have this caraway pan that I think is a little bigger than my other ones, so I'm giving a little bit of a heavier dough to put in that one. But there really is no specific way to shape this. You basically want to get it into a loaf shape. And so I like to press it out into a rectangle. I made sure to oil my pans with olive oil, and I'm brushing that around really good just so that they come out of the pan really easily. So my hands are nice and oily, which makes it easy to work with this dough. And then I just roll it up in like a log shape, making sure that I'm seaming the dough as I'm rolling it up. You can kind of pull it against the surface of the countertop as well. That helps seal in the bottom of that. When it's nice and sealed, it gets a better rise as it bakes. So I just kind of play around until I feel like it's all put together and in a good shape for the loaf pan. And it helps to have like a dough scraper to kind of work with the dough. But really fun process and enjoyable, and you'll get better at it as you go if you're new at bread baking. But basically press it out into a rectangle, roll it up, close in the ends and the seams, and you got yourself a beautiful loaf of bread ready to rise again in these loaf pans and then to begin baking. And I just wanted to let you know, if you're new here, I welcome you to my channel. My name is Cami, and I am the creator behind the Tidbits and Company YouTube channel and blog, where I love to share inspiration for the keeper of the home. I love to share ideas for healthy living, and bread making just seems to be the thing I'm really passionate about right now. So if you want to join me, we'll be sharing lots of that. But you can see here this dough has risen beautifully, and it's just about 1 inch over the lip of the pan. That's a great spot to get it in your oven. Make sure that's nice and preheated at 350, and then you're going to cook it for about 25 to 30 minutes until it feels quite firm. When you're touching it, it's golden brown, smelling up your house. And the more you do this, the more you'll be able to have a more intuitive instinct on when it's done, what it's supposed to look like when it's all finished. Something else that's really fun to do after it's finished baking is to rub a stick of butter across the top. That gives it a nice buttery flavor. Kind of softens up the top too, so you don't have too crispy of crust, though sometimes you like that. I was really impressed with this caraway pan. It just slipped right out. A lot of times with my other pans, I have to get a knife and kind of separate it from the pan, but this just came right out and turned out so beautifully. It can be hard to resist slicing into your bread right away, but I highly recommend you wait until it's cooled down, because a lot of times if it's really warm and you go to slice it, it can get a little gummy and seem like it's doughy. But so I highly recommend you just wait till it cools down, slice it up into these beautiful slices, this moist and delicious bread that is so full of life-giving nutrition. And I haven't met a single person who has said that this bread is gross. My kids will bring over their friends and they'll eat it and just be obsessed. One time my son had a friend over and he was eating it, and I loved his comment. He was eating it and he just said, "Why is this bread so good?" It like made my day and just helped me realize how nourishing, delicious, and beautiful a loaf of homemade bread can be. Friend, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to make bread with me. I would love to hear in the comments below what you thought, if you enjoy making bread, if you've ever baked with freshly milled flour, or if you want to learn more, if you have any questions. I'm all ears, so definitely leave a comment for me down below. And then please remember to check the description to shop Caraway. Remember that you can bundle that cookware set and get 20% off, plus stack my coupon code tidbits10 for another 10% off site-wide. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll be back very soon to share more inspiration for the keeper of the home.